We were lucky enough to get on Dragon's Den in our third year, which is like the Canadian version of Shark Tank. And we ended up getting a deal on the show. And, it was a big publicity thing for us as well, where people around the university college campus, they started to hear about us. They wanted to be a part of what we were doing. And that just kind of allowed us to take our business and really just explode it. We just felt that the slow, methodical approach was the most responsible way to do it. From a cash flow perspective, it sucks. I heard a crazy stat where it's like most franchise agreements last longer than the average marriage in North America. Franchise prospect who was telling his brother about it. His brother's like, I would never hire someone to clean my grill. And then like a month later, he called us out and he's now one of our biggest customers. He's like, signed up on a yearly membership. He's like, I'm never not doing this anymore.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Franchise Business Real Talk with me, Guy Coffee, and a special guest today, Mike Sutton from Grill Hero. I wanted to have Mike on because he's got an interesting origin story and he's bringing Grill Hero to the US just recently. So they've had success in Canada and now they're going to be bringing it to the US. And it's just a really interesting story. I've been working with Mike and his sidekick, Nathan Brewer, who are just really, really nice guys, originally from Toronto, Canada. I know Mike's in Kelowna, BC right now, but I think this will be a really interesting interview from a franchise origin story, as well as some information on something that might be of interest to some people listening that maybe are getting into franchising or they want to expand their portfolio or maybe want to diversify a little bit. It's one of the reasons I originally looked at Grill Hero was because, we're in fitness and beauty and I don't have anything in home services or just service related. So that was of interest to me. And I'm sure it's going to be an interesting conversation, and welcome to the show, Mike. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah. So how is it in Kelowna, BC today?
Oh, it's just starting to get cold on us. So the summer's officially over. Fall kind of came, I think, overnight. And now we're heading into snowboarding season though. So I'm looking forward to that, which is exciting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm in Colorado, so I'm looking forward to the same thing. I just, put a bunch of sunk costs into an Epic Pass, and I will be making the most out of that this winter for sure. Awesome. But that's not what people are here to hear about. So tell us a little bit about the origin story of Grill Hero, how you started it, and then quickly fast forward, if you wouldn't mind, to your entrance into the U.S. market, because that's new news. So tell us about how it started and then how you're coming to the U.S.
For sure. So it's been about 8 years now in the making. So originally I started the business with a business partner back when we were at university, just looking for kind of a summer job, something else to do, like against the traditional kind of 9-to-5s internships that we were, doing before. So we wanted to get outside, do a different service. I wanted to try something a little bit different. And so it was kind of interesting. My parents had recently got their barbecue cleaned, and the process just wasn't very good. It was really hard to find someone to come out. There wasn't many people doing it. The guy who ended up coming wasn't very professional, charged a lot of money, and overall it was just like a bad experience. And that kind of led us to just start looking into it as an opportunity. And we started to see like there was really no one serving the current market we were in, which in Toronto, it's a pretty big market. There's a lot of people with barbecues, a lot of money there. And so we just started going out and knocking on doors in our local neighborhood. And, we didn't even know how to clean barbecues at the time, but we just went out for a couple of days, knocked on doors. And in our first day, we got 5 sales. And people were just like super excited about it. The initial reaction was pretty much like, I hate doing this. My barbecue's a mess and you're going to come do it for me, like sign me up. And so that was kind of our eureka moment where we realized we kind of had something. And then throughout that first summer, we just continued to knock on doors, build customers in our local neighborhood, spread word of mouth. And that was where we really established things. And then from there, obviously we took the business more and more seriously from knocking on doors, and we kind of continue to build it. We built out a team, and then we were lucky enough to get on Dragon's Den in our third year, which is like the Canadian version of Shark Tank. And we ended up getting a deal on the show, and it was a big publicity thing for us as well, where people around the university college campus, they started to hear about us. They wanted to be a part of what we were doing, and that just kind of allowed us to take our business and really just explode it. Where we had a lot of people who wanted to be a part of it. We built out an awesome team, continued to scale. And then in our 6th year, I really started to look into franchising. Always kind of admired what 1-800 Got Junk and other like home service franchisors were able to do through the franchising model. And we had tested out like different things as well. So we tested out like the corporate model. We went into Ottawa, which is like a different market, and tried to do it ourselves. And we just weren't well capitalized enough to properly grow into new markets ourselves. We didn't have enough focus. Like we ended up operating like a huge corporate territory where like we weren't really going deep on any specific area. We were kind of scratching the surface geographically. And that's when we kind of came up with like, okay, franchising works in home services. There's all these people who have already done it super, super well. So let's kind of replicate what they've done and do it in grill cleaning. Kind of the beautiful thing is we kind of looked around and there's no one who was doing grill cleaning franchises at the time. And there still really isn't. There might be a couple others now, but there's no one who's really come in and dominated the market. So that's when we kind of decided, let's pivot to franchising. Let's get going with that, and really use it as a way to grow across North America and build Grill Hero as the brand name in grill cleaning services. So kind of fast forward to now, we have 5 franchises across Canada, a large corporate region or large corporate territory still. And now we're just in the process of, moving into the US and talking to a number of different prospects about opening up locations in the United States.
You summed it up very well. It's a long journey though. And your locations in Canada, are they besides the one in Ottawa, which is a corporate location, which is great. We had the same thing for our system where we had corporate studio, so that we could share those numbers, which is really important for validation and things like that. Your other ones, are they all around Toronto, or do you have something in Kelowna as well?
Nothing in Kelowna right now. Yeah, it's all in Ontario. So like the GTA, Ottawa, and other kind of regions of Ontario. And it's actually actively something we're kind of shrinking the size of corporate and selling off a lot of the outskirt territories as franchise locations. And kind of the dream or like the future plan is to have like a much smaller corporate region where we can use it as a testing ground, use it as a proof of concept, and then just really put 100% of our focus on the franchise side.
You guys are relatively small, emerging brand, and you're having success in a climate. I have a we're not quite as north as you, but I do have a cabin in northern Minnesota. And so we know that the grilling season is considerably shorter there than it is in Florida and Texas, which is where you're focused on in the US, right? That'll be interesting to see what those numbers, how they skew the numbers, actually improve the numbers. I'm kind of excited for whoever's getting those markets to see that. I really like your forethought on how to grow smartly, not just fast. We see fast, you know, not working all the time in franchising, and so I like a more surgical approach. But tell me how you came up with that idea and how that's going so far.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, when we started, we just wanted to start with one franchisee to really nail the model, make sure, obviously going from corporate location to franchise, there's so much to learn, right? Like obviously the processes, the systems, so many things are different, how to properly coach people and help bring them up as entrepreneurs. It's a whole new skill set. So we brought on one franchisee, and we also brought on a number of consultants who had worked at other big home service franchisors, to teach us, how do we properly support, how do we properly build the world-class systems that we want at Grill Hero so that we can make it the best opportunity for our franchise partners. And in our first year, that's what we really focused on is let's nail the model with one franchisee. Let's build all the backend systems and continue to improve them and reiterate things. And once we felt comfortable with that, we brought on 3 additional franchises. And then they all operated in 2024. And then we just brought on a new location last month, who's now kind of in the startup training process. And so we just felt that the slow, methodical approach was the most responsible way to do it. From a cash flow perspective, it sucks. It's been, obviously, it's a lot more expensive to try and do it slowly because you're not being able to bring in all the franchising fees and hit critical mass with royalties. So our corporate operations really like funding everything. And so it's difficult, but we think that was the right thing to do. It was the most responsible way to build a really strong system before we get to the next level where now we're looking to scale it to like 15 new franchisees in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really smart approach. It's more painful, but it's longer lasting for sure. Once you get on that, sales cycle, where you're basically selling and then having to sell to support the new people that are coming up, it becomes a real point of focus, and you can lose focus on what's most important, and that is the success of each franchisee. Um, and I would say, just as an older guy to a younger guy in franchising and time on earth, is sometimes it's you get the right franchisees and the support, and they're rocking and rolling. If you they're having success, then the model is working. And then sometimes you have to be really careful on who you bring into the organization, especially those pioneer people, the people in the beginning that are taking a shot on a risk on you as an emerging brand. And hopefully they have the same success. And if they don't, you got to have a plan on how to move them out of the system and get someone else in as fast as possible. So I think that's an important part of that, because every system has its top 10%, like Uber performers, the 80 that are just standard average, which is great, and then the 10% that are just below, and they just can't seem to get the model, or whatever the case may be. But those early days are the most important. So I would just say, like, be really, really careful about who you're bringing on as a pioneer, because, as they're in your FDD forever.
Yeah, I heard a crazy stat where it's like most franchise agreements last longer than the average marriage in North America. So it's like it's a long term thing. You definitely really want to make sure you bring on the right people. And it's actually advice, and I appreciate the advice. Something I heard early on in my journey from another franchisor who said, like, make sure you nail like who you're bringing into the system. And so last year, like, we said no to a number of people who wanted to give us their money and become franchise partners. And it was like such a tough decision to make, because like we could really use this money to grow and all these different things. And having to say no is just like, yeah, it sucks. It's difficult, but we ended up saying no to like 2 or 3 people last year. And I think it was the right move. But looking back, I'm like, oh, those franchise fees, those additional royalties would have been great, but in the long run, it just doesn't obviously wouldn't have made sense.
If there was some magical wand you could, wave to find the ideal franchise operator, that would be a great thing. Unfortunately, we haven't figured it out yet either. So, and in some of the people that you're like, I'm not so sure, and then they're rock stars. So I had a friend of mine who's grown a really, really big system. They're global, and I asked him at one point, like, you don't have much of a filtering system for bringing people in. And it's pretty much, if they can write a check, they're in. And it was back in the more Wild West days. And he goes, I've been wrong so many times. Like, someone looks like they're going to be a rock star, and they're just a dud, or they can't get through the little challenges of small business. And I've seen people that, I was like, oh, this guy probably isn't going to work. And then they're rock stars. So I gave up on it. So I wouldn't go with his method. It's worked out for him, but I don't think it's the most scientific or data driven method. But tell me a little bit about, like, who's your ideal franchisee? Wait, maybe ideal, but also probably your most probable franchisee. You know what I mean? Like, who's going to be interested in Grill Hero, and who do you think would do well at it? Because I'm sure that's what you want in the end, is like less franchisees, but all of them are going to be doing really well in your system.
For sure. So it's interesting. Like, when we went into it, like, we were obviously trying to define like who our avatar would be. And in our first round of franchisees, we have such a mixed bag of people with different experience. We have like a younger guy who's in his mid 20s, who's like fresh out of college and just always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but didn't have the right idea. So he was actually our first franchisee. But then in our next round, we had everywhere from, guys who have been, he was, run big businesses and, quite successful business career. Other guys who have like come out of like, corporate jobs and stuff like that, and were in their mid 40s. So it's been kind of like a mix. I would say the overarching thing we look for is people who fit our values. And so in Grill Hero, we have our hero values, which is honesty, empathy, reliability, and openness. So we just want people to nail those values. We know if they are, a good cultural fit, they fit those values. They're going to be open to coaching. They're going to be honest with us. They're going to be reliable to the targets they set, the numbers, the things that they say they're going to do. And they're empathetic to understand that, when things happen, that's, we have to work together as a business relationship. If they fit that bill, they're going to be good franchisees. And so throughout our friend dev process, we're evaluating them to make sure they are a good values fit. And then when they come out for discovery day, and we meet them in person, we get to really confirm that. Just focusing more on the values. we're able to bring in the right people.
Not a bad way to lead. Not a bad way to lead at all. I like that. That's really smart. And I like how the mnemonic works for you guys, the hero
Yeah.
acronym. That's really nice. So you talked about your advisors that are helping you become a franchisor, not just in name or because you're selling franchises, but like the experience, the going up the learning curve faster because of their experience. Um, that's fantastic. I would like to know, how you're doing that because it's not like you're giving people paid board seats or anything like that. And then I would like to hear, if you don't mind sharing your plan, particularly, I think a question would come up. It's like, okay, Mike's in Kelowna snowboarding or wake surfing, depending on the season. Nathan's in Toronto going to a Leafs game, watching them win, hopefully, unless they're playing the Blackhawks. And like, how are you going to support the guy or the gal that buys a territory in Naples, Florida?
So in terms of like our fractional support, fractional executives have just really become a big thing in the past like 3 to 4 years. And so we've really tapped into people who had like awesome corporate jobs at great home service franchise systems and have shifted to becoming either fractional executives. We recently brought on like a fractional marketing director. We're looking at bringing on a fractional CFO. And so we just find the right people who are now offering those kind of fractional roles with the like exact experience we're looking for. So home service franchisor. And we've been able to find just like people with such a good amount of knowledge in exactly what we're doing that they've been able to come in and like, I would say take us, like our journey is just way shorter. Like we have like the world-class systems that were built over 30 years at one of the biggest home service companies in the world. And we've been able to kind of plug that into our business and learn from a lot of the things that either maybe they didn't do well in the early days or, people who have been there kind of for a long time. So we've been able to, I think, skip a lot of the steps and kind of just expedite our growth and expedite the quality of our systems. So that's been awesome. In terms of
Nice.
like what we currently have set up on our support structure is our team runs completely remotely. And we've been really good at kind of nailing that and being able to utilize that. So I live on the West Coast. All of our other team members are in Toronto or the GTA. I'm constantly traveling. I fly back to Toronto pretty much on a monthly basis. And same thing with, moving into the US, we're going to continue to support our franchisees. We actually fly out for the launch of all the franchisees. And so we're just going to be flying a lot, doing tons of travel, and then, working remotely because we've built our system to be a remote system where we can, operate virtually and everything like that to connect everyone together. So.
Nice. Tell me about with your virtual setup, have you done discovery days already and what do they look like and what will they look like?
So discovery days we do in person. Yeah, we always do them in person. We actually fly everyone out, like everyone flies out to Toronto and we meet in person there. And that's works, well for us. And so we get to obviously do the whole friend dev process virtually. And then when it comes to actually meeting finally for discovery day, we want to bring everyone in person. We spend the full day together. We go out to job sites. We do a full, presentation. We dive really deep on the business. We bring in other team members. So they really get like the feel of what the business is and it's all the people behind it, all like what the actual job sites are going to look like, and so it allows them to kind of really see the full operation that you really can't do that virtually. So
Exactly. And that's where you get to know the prospective franchisees and they get to know you a little bit. And, hopefully there's a fit there. Is that the last part of your sales process?
yeah, that's like the last part, and then we end discovery day always by we go for a nice dinner, where it's like no real business talk. We're just getting to know each other on like a personal level, really to start building that relationship. Make sure there's a good fit there, and really just it's a great relationship builder and a great way to just say like, hey, this guy fits our values, it fits our system. And then from there we move to obviously sign the agreements, and then we get started on our launch and startup and launch program.
It's interesting, the fractional model for anybody that's listening that, has operations already or is considering it. There are some really, really high quality people available, that are happy to do services for you. And we waited like 3 years to hire a fractional CFO. I was doing the work. And then we only had him for like 2 years before we sold, and I kicked myself every day for not hiring him sooner. It was like he was so smart and so good at it, and we only had him for like 40 hours a month. But the amount of stuff that he got done quicker, the analysis, deeper, better, like everything was night and day. And I think that's a model that's going to continue to grow. And I like how you've tapped into that for anybody else considering that it's a night and day difference. And it's cool because it's also someone that's outside of your organization and they have a little bit more of an objective view on things and maybe more experience to bring in there. So I like how you're doing that. That's pretty forward thinking there. I like that. I think the number one thing that people might have a question on is that for support, but I'm sure you've thought this through and have a really good reason for it. You only have a handful, like usually depends on what it is, but it's the range is different with each industry. But like in beauty, in fitness, it's usually between like 20 and 30 units per franchise business coach. Someone's just starting out, so they need a lot more help. Someone's running into challenges, so they need more help. They just have to have that bandwidth, So, the beauty of the fractional model is if you can find the right people, you can expand that as you go, even easier. Maybe it's you have someone that's a rock star in that support category, and just in case people are listening, like, well, this, cleaning grills is different than, plumbing services, but it's from a franchise business coach perspective. There's lots of similarities in home services. Part of it is psychological help, basically. Like, hey, we can get you through this. Let's walk through it together so that the franchisee has someone that's been down that path before walking with them. And then some of it is more data driven, like, okay, what's your service revenue per hour? How many tickets can you get? Like, how do we raise the ticket, the average ticket? And I'm sure you're working on all those things too, right?
Yeah, a lot of it's really just like business problems are the same from business to business, especially when you're in home services. It's like the systems are very similar. How you acquire customers, how do you service those customers, like what you're actually doing. Obviously, it matters, but from a coaching perspective, it's a little bit less relevant than just obviously the business challenges are going to be very similar.
I've read your posts. So, we've had conversations. I saw you recently on a podcast. One of the things that we talked about a little bit ago is I've had the same experience because I've been talking to people about Grill Hero, and, some of my friends are like, I would not spend money to get my grill clean. My grill is worth $400, and I know you guys have parameters, so you don't do grills that are $400 grills. Right. And then the other half of people are like, yeah, I didn't even know there was a service for that. I would pay for that all day long. Like, I'm one of those people, and my wife certainly is. You know, and you said that recently in a podcast interview, and I just think that's fascinating because my own real world experience in talking to a bunch of people locally is it's like 50-50, and there's no competitors in town. So that's if you got 50% of the market that wants a service and there's like two companies that do it in the market, that's great for business, right?
Yeah, a lot of people have invested in their barbecues in their backyards, especially like after COVID. Like you have people who have like a nice Weber, Napoleon, a lot of premium brands as well in the US. People love their backyards. They love their grills. And so it's funny too, there is kind of like one more category in there. It's the people that kind of hear about it, they get it instantly and they're like, I need that. There's people like, oh, I wouldn't pay for that. And then there's people who are like, I don't think I'd pay for that, but they do have a nice grill. And then they start every time they start barbecuing and grilling, they start looking at their grill a little bit differently. They're like, oh, maybe I should clean this. And they start opening things up and looking around, and then they come around to it. We actually recently had an experience with actually a franchise prospect who was telling his brother about it. His brother's like, I would never hire someone to clean my grill. And then like a month later, he called us out and he's now one of our biggest customers. He's like signed up on a yearly membership. He's like, I'm never not doing this anymore. Just because he started looking at his grill a little bit differently and realizing how actually dirty and disgusting it was because he had never cleaned it before. And it's just funny that like people come around as soon as they kind of get the awareness of the service, they really start to think about what they're doing on their grill a little bit differently.
I bet awareness is the first step for sure,
Yeah.
for sure. So, how are you attracting prospects in the U.S. right now, or is it the same as in the U.S. and Canada?
So in Canada, we've been pretty lucky, like pretty good with our Facebook ad campaigns that we've been running. So primarily Canada, we've gone to a lot of the franchise trade shows, and then we do Facebook ads, and then we like cut through our networks and LinkedIn and stuff like that as have kind of been our primary ones. And then in the US, we've really just leveraged our networks, LinkedIn referrals, and now podcasts. The last podcast I was on, I think it brought us like 10 to 15 franchise leads and like really high quality people. Obviously, people who listen to business podcasts are really engaged. They're really dialed in. They're typically experienced operators or professionals in business, and so that's been a great way. And we're looking to kind of continue that. So getting on more podcasts, doing more LinkedIn organic posts, and then finding other ways to acquire new leads into the US. We'll probably launch a Facebook campaign similar to how we do it in Canada, and then kind of grow from there. The brokerage networks have been on our radar. We've had some calls with them, but I don't think we're ready to kind of dive into that world just yet. So we'll see what we can do kind of more organically.
I nod towards that approach. I've done both, and I just think right now it's, if you guys are attracting 10 to 15 prospects from a podcast episode, and it's once, it's just like when you open a business, it's a lot different when the customers are in the building than like pre-opening. Like, yeah, like we're going to go wash the bathrooms now. And then later on, we're going to do this. It's like, once the customers are there, it's like, it goes around the customers. So you're dealing with the same thing. And that's why I think that slow, steady growth with like people that are doing really well, and you have the bandwidth to support them. Totally unsolicited advice, but I'm still going to give it. And then, on the Dragon, which you mentioned, I thought that was that must have been a really cool experience, especially as a college kid. It's our version of Shark Tank. And then I just wanted to, in case anybody's looking that up, but I think you did a rebrand to Grill Hero, which I love that name. I think it makes sense. Everybody knows what you're doing. And once you guys walk away from a job and it looks like new again, you are the Grill Hero until someone cooks some amazing ribs on it later that day, hopefully. But it used to be Canadian Barbecue Boys, right? And so if anybody's looking up that episode, I think you guys were still under that name at that point in time, right?
Yeah, it'll be under Canadian Barbecue Boys, and then we did the full rebrand actually earlier this year in March.
Yeah,
and so Grill Hero is kind of new for us, but people love the Grill Hero name, and we all think it's just so much better. So we're like super happy with the rebrand. And yeah, it's been great so far.
Yeah. Although I did like the Canadian barbecue. It's just not going to sell well in Florida or whatever, but
that's what we figured.
Yeah. But I do like that, just because in hockey you call everybody, your teammates are the boys. Like, doesn't matter. I play with like super old guys like me, and it's still the boys. So I did like that aspect of it. But Grill Hero, I think, is a fantastic name, and I'm really excited for you and your team. And I don't know your whole team. I know Nathan, and you guys are just down to earth, like hardworking, salt of the earth. I can picture you guys rolling up your sleeves and helping someone out, if they need a job done or something like that. And, you guys are a little bit further north than Minnesota. Is Minnesota nice, and I think Canadians are, polite and hardworking and hardy group of people. And I like the idea of your service and what you guys are doing. I'm really, really excited for you guys. So wishing you the best of luck. And if we can play a part in that somehow, some way, we'd probably like to do that too. So, but thanks for being on the show. And we will have links to the Grill Hero, website and anything else that will guide people towards getting to know Grill Hero and what you guys are doing better. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Geek. Appreciate having me on.
All right. Have a good one.